Sometimes evil doesn't come in the form of monsters hiding in the shadows. Sometimes it wears pearls, drives a golf cart, and waves a clipboard in the middle of a sunny suburban street. And the day the red and blue lights reflected off Karen Wilkins' perfect white fence was the day her reign of control finally ended. I'll never forget that moment, standing in front of our security monitor, watching Karen's face bathe in the glow of police lights. She was proud, triumphant even, convinced that after months of harassment, she'd finally caught us doing something wrong. Her arms were folded tightly across her chest, chin lifted in smug satisfaction as she pointed toward our gated driveway. But then something changed. One of the officers pressed his earpiece, listened for a few seconds, and his expression shifted. He turned to her and said flatly, "Ma'am, dispatch says this was a false report. There's no emergency at this address." I swear I saw the color drain from her face. She tried to recover, insisting she'd heard screams, that something suspicious was happening inside our home. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that the dispatcher who took her 911 call was my wife. 3 months earlier, my wife Elaine and I had moved into what we thought was our dream home, a quiet property on the far edge of Oakwood Estates. It was beautiful, peaceful, surrounded by tall oak trees and the sound of birds in the morning. Technically, our property wasn't even inside the HOA's jurisdiction. The realtor had made that clear. We were outside the boundary line, free from their ridiculous rules about mailbox colors and hedge heights. But apparently, no one told Karen Wilkins, the self-appointed queen of the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association. It started with a knock at the door one Saturday morning. There she stood, khaki pants, pastel cardigan, and a clipboard hugged against her chest like a badge of authority. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said sweetly. "I just wanted to let you know your mailbox doesn't meet our community standards. You'll need to replace it within 7 days." I remember trying to be polite. I even offered to show her our documents proving we weren't part of the HOA. But she waved me off, laughing softly like I was a child who didn't understand how the world worked. "That's a common misconception," she said. "All homes in this visual corridor must follow our aesthetic guidelines." And before I could say another word, she shoved a massive binder into my hands, over 100 pages of rules. Rules about house colors, fence materials, even the maximum height of garden gnomes. I knew right then we were in for trouble. The following weeks became a nightmare. Karen returned again and again, sometimes with fake concern, sometimes with pure hostility. First, it was the mailbox, then the landscaping, then our porch light was too bright. Each time I told her the same thing, "Karen, we're not part of the HOA." Each time she became more offended, more determined. Soon she started tapping violation notices to our mailbox like she was law enforcement. When we ignored her, she began parking her golf cart outside our driveway, taking photos of our home. I once caught her measuring our hedges with a tape measure, blocking my car in the process. When I asked her to move, she launched into a 20-minute lecture about community responsibility. Elaine, my wife, told me to just ignore her, but it got worse. The day we received a certified letter claiming we owed $750 in HOA fines, I decided enough was enough. I installed a security gate. A simple, black wrought iron gate with a keypad entry and intercom. It wasn't meant to be hostile, just a boundary. But to Karen, it was an act of war. Within hours, she left voicemails demanding the gate code for emergency access. She cited non-existent HOA codes and threatened legal action. I saved everything, every voicemail, every note, every picture. Elaine, being an emergency dispatcher, advised we might eventually need a restraining order. She was right. Then came the day everything exploded. That morning, I was working from home when the gate buzzers started ringing over and over. Through the security camera, I saw Karen standing there, finger pressed against the button like she was summoning the dead. Her face was red with fury. I pressed the intercom. "Karen, please step away from the gate." Her voice cracked through the speaker like a whip. "Open this gate now. I've received a complaint and need to inspect your property." "Karen," I said as calmly as I could, "you have no authority here. You're not allowed to inspect private property. Please stop harassing us." Her lips curled into a snarl. "You'll regret this," she hissed. And she stormed off. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 20 minutes later, the security system chimed again, motion at the gate. When I pulled up the camera feed, Karen was back. But this time, she was on her phone, packing, gesturing wildly toward our house. I turned up the volume, just in time to hear her say, "Yes, I need police immediately. I heard screaming from inside this house, and they won't open the gate. I think someone might be hurt." My stomach dropped. She was calling 911, making a false report. I immediately tried to call Elaine, but she was on duty and couldn't answer personal calls. All I could do was watch, helpless, as Karen stood there with that smug, righteous look on her face, certain she'd finally trapped us. But fate had other plans. At that very moment, the 911 dispatcher who took her call was Elaine. She recognized Karen's voice instantly. She also recognized our address. By procedure, she couldn't dismiss the call outright, but she could mark it as suspicious. She logged that the caller was a known harasser, and instead of sending an emergency team, she flagged it as a welfare check. 10 minutes later, a police cruiser rolled up to our gate. Karen ran toward it like she'd been waiting all her life for this moment. She pointed at our house, voice high and shrill. I decided to meet them at the gate. "Officers, I'm the homeowner," I said, showing my ID. "There's no emergency. This woman has been harassing us for months." One of the officers nodded, listening through his earpiece. Then he asked, "Sir, is your wife Elaine Miller?" "Yes," I said cautiously. His tone softened. "She's on dispatch right now. She gave us some context." He turned to Karen. "Ma'am, did you report hearing screams from inside this property?" Karen's chin lifted defiantly. "Yes, I did. They wouldn't let me in. Something going on here." The officer's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, the dispatcher who took your call is this gentleman's wife. She's informed us that you've made repeated false reports against this residence. We also have your call recording." For the first time, Karen looked unsure. That's not true," she stammered. "She's covering for him." But the second officer stepped forward, holding a small tablet. "Ma'am, your call log shows you've made similar accusations against multiple residents in the past. You claim to hear screaming at 3 different houses this year." Neighbors were starting to gather now, curious faces peeking from doorways, cameras in hand. Karen's confidence cracked. Then the officer said the words I'd been waiting months to hear. "Karen Wilkins, you're being placed under arrest for filing a false police report and misuse of emergency services." The look on her face was pure disbelief. "You can't do this. I'm the HOA president," she shouted as they handcuffed her. But they could, and they did. As she was escorted to the patrol car, she turned to glare at me through the flashing lights. "This isn't over," she spat. I met her eyes calmly. "Actually, Karen, I think it is." The neighborhood was silent as the car pulled away. Then, one by one, people began to step forward. An older man from down the street approached me quietly. "We've all wanted to say something," he said, "but no one had the courage, thank you." For the first time, I realized we hadn't just stood up for ourselves. We'd freed the entire neighborhood from her grip. Weeks later, Karen's case went to court. Elaine and I submitted our recordings, messages, and footage, every piece of evidence showing months of harassment. The judge didn't hold back. Karen was fined $5,000, sentenced to a year of probation, and ordered to complete 200 hours of community service. And yes, we finally got that restraining order. She couldn't come within 100 feet of our property ever again. But perhaps the most poetic justice came from within the HOA itself. An emergency meeting was called. Neighbors gathered, and for the first time spoke openly about her years of intimidation. The vote was unanimous. Karen Wilkins was officially removed as HOA president. When she was escorted out of that meeting, she looked stunned, like she couldn't comprehend that her power had finally evaporated. Sometimes, justice doesn't arrive with grand speeches or dramatic music. Sometimes it comes quietly, through patience, truth, and the strength to finally say no. Karen thought she ruled the neighborhood. But in the end, she only ruled her own downfall. That was today's tale from Hoa Tailies. Thank you for listening. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you.